The Disney Afternoon Collection finally hits Nintendo Switch and Nintendo Switch 2 after being available on other platforms, and it comes with a Super Nintendo bonus, 2 of them. And I'm going to be covering it all here for you in this review of the Disney Afternoon Collection. So let's start off with the whole package. The game's fun and colorful 90s presentation, and a very catchy chip tune to really reel you in and make you feel that sense of delicious nostalgia. And you really feel the 90s love with everything, especially as you explore around. This collection has a healthy selection of 8 games in total, and they come with the features you come to expect now out of these emulated games, which is save states, rewind, screen filters, and even border options, so a little bit more to offer than the NSO service. But the games themselves aren't the sole focus of this collection, as you also get a nice behind the scenes look back using the gallery that gives you little tidbits on how the game development went behind the scenes and all the awesome artwork that went into it. And you get a music selection to listen to all the really good chip tunes that all these games had. That is definitely something I noticed playing through all these games. Now, I said this is a collection of 8 games, so I'm just going to go through a gauntlet of reviews here. We can just quickly go through each game and see if that makes it an overall good collection. So let's dive right in. DuckTales 1 and 2. So I'm going to start off with DuckTales 1. There's an interesting gimmick. You have to collect these rare treasures from each area to then reach the final area and beat the game. And I really like this treasure hunting aspect, and the stages are varied, and I love the pogo mechanic. It makes you feel so bouncy and yet powerful. But there can be some classic NES difficulty spikes with this one that can get pretty frustrating. Luckily for me, the rewind feature would come in when it was really getting bad, but it was mostly manageable. So overall, I like this one a lot. Now let's get straight into DuckTales 2, because this is where I see such an improvement. Not with just better visuals, but also better controls and new gameplay gimmicks that add so much more, and I feel like the game was actually fully capable of realizing the treasure hunting gimmick with this game, because after every stage you can use that money to help you on your journey, which I think is a good idea. And overall, this game feels like a culmination of everything they learned during the NES era of developing these types of games, as I played through all of them here. And I loved DuckTales 2. It felt like such a nice journey to go through. Alright, let's move on to another duo, Chip and Dale's Rescue Rangers 1 and 2. So Chip and Dale's Rescue Rangers 1. What a cool feature about Chip and Dale is that it is built around the idea of co-op. You can play both as Chip and Dale. And the core gameplay mechanic seems to be picking up and throwing boxes at all your enemies, which is really fun to do actually. Reminds me a little bit of Super Mario 2. Now while that's a fun mechanic, one thing that got a little overused is that all the bosses seem to focus around this idea of throwing a red ball at the boss, and it kind of made every boss feel a bit samey to figure out, not all that difficult. And this game also has some slightly frustrating moments, never too bad. And overall, I liked Chip and Dale's Rescue Rangers. Now with Chip and Dale Rescue Rangers 2, we have a case of a sequel that grows upon the aspects in all the right ways, where they expand the mechanics, and the sprite work is so cute in this game, and the extra feature to throw boxes at angles now really helps out in some situations. Also, the bosses will now all have unique gimmicks, so that took care of that weird samey vibe of the previous game. And I loved this game, and I think it would be a good time with a friend. Alright, we're halfway through them. Let's keep going, shall we? The next up is Bonkers, which is a franchise I'm not really familiar with. And just with that same feeling, the controls didn't immediately hit with me. It took me a little while to realize it's a bit of a Sonic game, where it's more about keeping that momentum to rush through a stage and create thrilling moments. And once I started getting into it, I started to like it. And the sprite work, due to the power of the Super Nintendo, was able to be much more cartoony and felt very faithful to Disney cartoons of back in the day. There was lots of crazy and wacky moments that could happen, and they were fun visual gags. So while it didn't leave the strongest impression at the start, I really liked Bonkers. Now, before I get into the game of TailSpin, can I just say I always found this show's concept a bit strange? Baloo from The Jungle Book flying a plane? Alright, but that mix-up is kind of nice for the gameplay. It turned it into an on-rails shooter with a interesting mechanic to be able to kind of go into reverse in the world whenever you press the button. But I never felt like it really fully utilized that gimmick, and I wish I did because it's a very unique gimmick. Another unique thing is at the end of each stage, you can use all your funds to upgrade your plane, which came in very handy towards the end there, as this game has some high difficulty spikes randomly throughout the game, and it kind of soured the whole experience for me. So while the game mechanics and gameplay is interesting, I just felt a little meh with this game. DarkWing Duck was one of the coolest Disney shows back in the day, and this game captures that essence, even with the limited hardware of the NES. And not only does it look like DarkWing Duck, you feel a little bit like DarkWing Duck with your gun and your maneuverability, as you can cling on to ceilings and jump up over it. You would also get these unique gun power-ups that I honestly felt like were a bit useless in most cases and just stuck with the regular gun, as that got me through a lot more of the difficult enemies. And the stages and gameplay felt very familiar to that of Mega Man, which wouldn't be too huge of a surprise since it is made by Capcom. And it's kind of funny to see them take that influence and put it into a little Disney cartoon game. But it works, and overall, I liked DarkWing Duck and think it's a great addition to this collection. Now finally, one of the other new titles they added to this collection, Goof Troops. The gameplay is something very unusual that I wasn't expecting for Goofy and Max to really get involved with, which is a pirate adventure with tossing mechanics and with the use of tools to puzzle solve and get around nasty enemies. Now this game is clearly designed with co-op in mind, but it is still enjoyable and totally doable by yourself. It has a lot of clever box pushing puzzles and enemy placements that make you really have to think about your placement and what tools you need to be using to best get around these obstacles. Now, I have a soft spot for Goofy, so I'm very happy to see that this game was actually a lot of fun to play through. And I loved playing the Super Nintendo's Goof Troops in this collection. Phew, okay, 8 games reviewed, and overall, I enjoyed my time with this collection, because as a kid, I never got to experience these games, even though I did watch these shows growing up. It was a weird sense of nostalgia to play these games for the first time, while also knowing that these were from my childhood. And if you were a fan of these shows, or even the games back in the day, I would say this is a good collection for you to have on hand, as they can just be a good game to play over, well, the afternoon. And overall, I like the Disney Afternoon Collection. It's a solid collection that pays respect to the history and development of these games. And I think that's really cool. So with that, thank you all for watching, and for more things on all things gaming, subscribe to GameXplain. See ya!